All right, so we've gotten a good amount of you answering. It looks like we have 43% of you leading the way. Oh, actually, 43% is tied. 43% of you, this is your first time learning how to use Visual Explorer, and another 43% of you have already started using Visual Explorer to build out some visualizations, and then a few other responses for the other options. So we're excited to have all of you on today's webinar, and we can get into it. So today we're going to be talking specifically about how you can use layers for multidimensional data in Visual Explorer. And before we get into it too much, we want to introduce ourselves. So I'll start off. My name is Jennifer Spoolma, and I'm the Customer Education and Enablement Manager at Mode. So I work on projects like Mode University and other customer education initiatives like this webinar series and other things like that. And then we also have Johnny Kelly on today's webinar. So Johnny, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure thing. Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. My name is Johnny. I'm a solutions engineer here at Mode. Been here for a couple of years now, just helping customers find value in the product. So thank you all for joining today.
Yeah, thank you. And we do want to make sure you know that you're welcome to submit any questions that you have along the way in today's webinar. And we will try to answer those throughout the webinar, but we will definitely make sure to answer them all at the end. So feel free to use Zoom's question and answer feature to submit any questions you have. Okay, next thing that we want to make sure you know about is this webinar is part of a webinar series. And so we have a total of 4 webinars that will be diving deep into different aspects of Visual Explorer. This is webinar number 2. So there's still 2 more webinars happening. And Samira, if you would like to send the link where you can sign up and register for future webinars, we would love to see you at those as well. So next week, we'll be talking about how to use quick calculations in Visual Explorer. And then the week after that, we'll talk about using Visual Explorer for data-driven storytelling. So some exciting topics in the future. And finally, we want to make sure that you know that there's also additional resources to learn how to use Visual Explorer within Mode University. So this is another link that Samira can send in the chat, and you can use that to access a quick start guide to Visual Explorer, which is a course that walks you through all Visual Explorer in about 30 minutes. So it's nice and quick. We also have practice guides built out where you can learn how to build different types of visualizations by following a step-by-step guides. And then we have on-demand trainings as well. All right, our agenda today. So we're going to start with a quick recap of what Visual Explorer is. And I think that will be really helpful, particularly for those of you who this is your first time learning about Visual Explorer. Then we'll talk about layers and what they are kind of conceptually. And then we'll get into a demo where we'll show you how to use layers and put them into action in Visual Explorer. We'll wrap it up with some guiding principles or some best practices when using layers in your visualizations. And of course, we will answer any questions that you have. So Johnny, would you like to kind of kick it off with a recap of what Visual Explorer is?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Jennifer. So for those of you who have never used Visual Explorer before, at its core, the Visual Explorer is really a flexible graphing environment. So just like how we have grammar in English that allows us to combine words to form interpretable sentences, the grammar of graphics, which is what the Visual Explorer is built upon, it provides a rule set that enables you to configure your visualization in numerous ways. So as we go throughout this demo, Jennifer is going to show you different ways that you can leverage not only layers, but also just how to use the Visual Explorer. And what you'll notice in this demo is the flexibility of this particular piece is why the Visual Explorer is great for data exploration, whereas Mode's quick charts are better for when you know what specific chart type you want and provide a quick way for you to create it. So Jennifer is going to show you a little bit about how the Visual Explorer works, but I did want to kind of highlight that difference between, when you go to create a chart in Mode, you have the option to select Quick Chart or Visual Explorer. So we're going to focus on Visual Explorer, but another great benefit of the Visual Explorer is the customizability of the visualizations themselves. So you can get more specific when it comes to formatting and coloring than you would with, let's say, quick charts in Mode. So Jennifer, anything else you wanted to add there?
No, I think that is an awesome foundation. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. So then what are layers? So layers is what we're focusing on in today's webinar. And layers are a brand new feature in Visual Explorer. So Johnny mentioned quick charts, and quick charts don't support the layers functionality. So this is brand new and it's exciting. And as a whole, layers refers to the method that we use for visualizing multidimensional data. So it allows you to use a variety of different aesthetic components to add more dimensions to your data visualization. These aesthetic components include mark type, color, size, text, and detail. And we'll get into all of these in our demo, but each of these gives you the flexibility to communicate more information in your data visualization. So you can see in this little GIF here how we are adding content to the layers, kind of down here in the right-hand corner. And as we do so, the visual appearance of our visualization is changing quite a bit. So even without diving deep into it yet, you can see how adding color and size and text kind of changes what you're looking at and can really enhance the interpretability of your visualization. And that's the whole goal of layers, is you want to use layers to emphasize the main ideas and the key takeaways of your data through your visualization. So let's get into our demo. If you joined our last webinar, then you're probably familiar with this demo dashboard that Johnny built out. And it has lots of examples of all of the different types of visualizations you can build in Visual Explorer. And the two that we're going to be walking through in today's demo is this faceted combo chart here, and then also this scatter plot down here. So when we're kind of looking at the final product right now, Johnny, is there anything about this faceted combo chart that you want to point out that people should keep their eyes open for when we build it out in real time?
Yeah, definitely. So as Jennifer mentioned before, emphasizing key takeaways from your visualization is really important for all of our audiences who are consuming dashboards, for them to get the relevant information that they need quickly. So as you can see in this faceted combo chart, if we wanted to emphasize size, we have total sales kind of represented here in size. So we've got like revenue. It looks like the South region has the highest revenue in this particular chart annually. So, the layers are really going to allow you to emphasize those key takeaways quickly for your customers. And I think as Jennifer goes through the demo, you'll kind of see different ways that you can highlight this. And I would, encourage you all to think about your audience when you're building these charts using the Visual Explorer, and think about what they need to kind of answer their questions. So just one thing to kind of highlight there with the layers piece.
Fantastic. And it looks like Samir sent a link to this dashboard in the chat. And so this is built out in our community workspace. And so this is a great resource if you want to copy that link, and you can follow along, or you can explore any of these visualizations for yourself. And that can be really helpful for learning how Visual Explorer works, is to kind of copy and remake data visualizations that you already see.
One thing I would add too, Jennifer, this is just, all of these visualizations that we have here, this is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? Like these are just a few of the many examples that you can probably build using the Visual Explorer. So as you start to leverage the power of the Visual Explorer, I would recommend, testing it, understanding what it can do, what it can't do. Again, this is just like some basic visualizations that we built at Mode, but think about, what specifically your audience needs when you're building these things.
Yeah, great. All right, so let's get into our demo here. So the data we have queried is from the Mode public warehouse. It's the Dunder Mifflin paper sales data. And if we want to build a new Visual Explorer instance off of this, we'll just click our new visualization button up here at the top and select Visual Explorer from our options. And now we're in Visual Explorer and we can start building out our visualization. So in this example, what we're going to be building out is that faceted combo chart that's going to be comparing total sales and payment cycles by region and by rating. So I'm going to put my title in there so we remember what our end goal is. So the first thing I'm going to do is start by dragging the payment cycle dimension that's over here and dragging that into columns. And then we're going to take the shipping region variable and we're actually going to put that into columns as well. And so even before we have like any data really or any measures showing up in our visualization, you can already see how the shipping region is showing up by each payment cycle. And that's because the order in which we have these nested in the columns, it's creating those facets for us that the shipping region is showing up by payment cycle. Now I want to get rid of this null facet here and only have our actual payment cycles in this. And so in order to do that, we're going to use the filter option in Visual Explorer. And I'm going to take the payment cycle dimension, drop it into filters, and then this opens up the ability to select which ones we want showing up. So I'll just uncheck the null option, apply and close. And now we just see the rest of the data without that in there. So now we can add our measures sort of visualization. So we're going to start by adding the price measure into rows. And now, we can see the sum of price or the sum of sales showing up in this bar graph. And then I also want to compare the rating. So we're going to take the rating measure and also drop that into rows. Right now, this is showing up in two different panes in the visualization. So if I want to bring these together on a dual axis, that's really easy to do in Visual Explorer. We'll just use this caret drop down on the rating measure and choose dual axis. So now here's an opportunity where we can see that by making that change, it actually made our visualization temporarily worse because we can't actually see that there's price data and rating data when they're both visualized as bar graphs in this case. And so what we want to do is we want to change our rating measure down here and use our layers option to change this from being displayed as a bar graph or a bar chart to a line graph. And now that dual axis is really working for us, where we can see the sum of sales as a bar and then the rating as a line. Now, the other adjustment that I want to make here with our rating data is that right now the rating data is showing up as a sum of the rating, which isn't super helpful in this case. So what I want to do is actually change this so that it's calculated as the average rating rather than the sum. And then, you probably saw how that changed how the lines displayed. And that's also because over here, now it just goes between 0 and 4 with the average of the rating rather than the total of the rating data. So that changing the way that the rating data was displayed from bar to line, that's what we call the mark type in Visual Explorer. So that was kind of the first layer change that we demoed for you. And we'll show a couple of these other ones in the next demo, but before I move on to the other layers below, Johnny, is there anything you'd like to add with where we're at right now?
Yeah, for sure. So as you can see, Jennifer's created this sort of faceted combo chart here. And one of the things that I like to highlight in this view right here before we start adding things into color and size is the ability to specifically choose one of your two measures in this layer section and display it however you want via that drop down that Jennifer just showed. So we have a number of different options there to choose from. And it really just depends, going back to what we were talking about earlier, it depends on what key takeaways you want your audience to take away from your visualization, right? So that's kind of the flexibility piece that this Visual Explorer offers, is you can kind of figure out how you want to build your visualization as you're building it. So that's one thing I like to highlight here, Jennifer, for you all.
Awesome. All right, so now that we kind of have the basis or the foundation of our visualization started, we can start using more layers. So we'll start with the color layer right here. So in this case, I think that like color could be really helpful to clarify which regions we're looking at within each of these facets. And so if I wanted to assign color to the regions, we would just take the shipping region dimension here and drop it into color. And actually, as I dropped that, I realized this isn't really where I wanted to drop it, but this is good for the sake of example. So since I put this into the average rating drop zone, you'll see that it assigned color to where that line graph was. And it made it like look more like a scatter plot because it was trying to assign a color to each distinct region. So actually where I wanted to put that was in the sum price drop zone for color. And now this looks more like what I was expecting it to. It's assigning color to each of our regions. And this is helpful in my visualization because even though we already technically had the region specified on our visualization and it was labeled down below, at a glance, it wasn't like super obvious that each of these facets, were representing the same region. And so color helps to do that, where now we can see that each of the southern region data is in yellow and the Midwest is in green and so forth. Now, color. So with the color, you can also add your custom color. So this was the default color option that was added, but you actually have a lot of flexibility and granularity to assign colors in Visual Explorer, which is very exciting. And we can show you how to do that. So if you click on the color icon right here, this is going to open up your ability to edit colors. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can click on the palette dropdown and you can choose from any of these uploaded color palettes or any custom color palettes that you've uploaded to your mode workspace and select them, select the palette. And then if you choose assign palette, this assigns the colors to your individual data points here. If you click apply and close, you'll see that that updates your visualization into these new wonderful colors. But you can even go even further than that with assigning specific colors. So if instead of just assigning, this color palette, if you just wanted to change one data point to a specific color, you could go back and choose any color palette. And then by selecting the data point you want to change, you could then choose a specific color, click apply and close, and now just that one data point has been added. Now, we also have, you have the ability to upload your own custom color palettes into mode. And that's something that's a little bit separate than Visual Explorer specifically. You can do that for your whole mode workspace. And so we have created a specific course about using custom colors in mode that just launched today. So it's brand new in Mode University. So if you didn't know that you could use custom colors, or if you don't know how to add new colors to mode, then definitely check out that course. It's going to walk you through the whole process so that you can use all of your own custom colors. Johnny, anything that you want to add about the colors before we move forward?
Definitely. Thank you, Jennifer. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of highlight here is for you all who maybe have not used mode in the past, is this is huge. in the past, to add custom colors to a specific metric in your visualization, previously you had to know how to write JavaScript and leverage our HTML editor to do this. So this new pane that we've added in the colors section of the layers is really going to be beneficial to you all who want to keep consistent color themes throughout your report, right? So if you have multiple visualizations all kind of referencing the same data, obviously you want those dimensions to kind of be mapped to the correct colors. So I think, in the past, this has been something that has been requested from a number of customers. And one of the things that we love at Mode here is we listen to you all. So we listen to our customers, and we really wanted to kind of highlight this as a key benefit to using the Visual Explorer.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it is very exciting. Colors are exciting. And Samira has shared the link in the chat too. So if you're wondering where to find the course, you can grab it from the chat and use it there. So I want to kind of emphasize just this color layer before we move on from it. Right now, what we're looking at, we're using the shipping region data with our colors. So we see, our legend over here, and it's communicating that same data that was already labeled below. But what's neat about layers is they actually allow you to add more dimensions and more information to your data visualizations. So just for the sake of example, instead of using shipping region, another option I could use to add more data to what we're looking at is just put something else that's not currently in our visualization into that color drop zone. So for example, if I took like the status dimension and dropped it into color, now, we're communicating something else with what we're looking at. We have color indicating which orders are completed and which orders were returned. So the blue is showing up with any returned orders. And so this is, just for showing the flexibility with Visual Explorer and how layers work. I think it's just helpful to know you don't always have to use them to communicate something you're already have visualized on your graph. So let's go back to shipping region, just so that it stays consistent with the example we've built out. And next we can move on to the size layer. So the next layer option you have right here is size. And we'll be using size in our next demo when we build out the scatter plot as well. But when you use it as a bar chart, it will actually change the width of the bars that you're looking at. So let's say that we wanted to add the quantity of sales, add that data to our visualization. We can drag the quantity measure up into the size layer. And now you can see this is looking more similar to the demo visualization we looked at, where all of the bars were different widths. So this provides some interesting analysis and interesting additional information, because we can see now that, the sales that had the largest quantity, or the largest quantity of sales happens to be on a bi-weekly basis, but the sales that are the largest sales, like dollar amount, is in the annual pay cycle, which kind of makes sense. People probably buy more on an annual basis than they do on a bi-weekly, but it's still just interesting to see all of this data visualized. Now the next layer for text right here, the text layer can be really helpful if you want to communicate a measure directly on your visualization. So before I show text, I just want to kind of reiterate that when you hover over any of your data points in Visual Explorer, when you're in Visual Explorer or when you're on the report view, it's going to show you the details of the specifics for the price that this is communicating, the quantity, the shipping region, and the little pop-up screen there. I can't think of what to call that right now. But the text layer is going to give you the added ability to display that right on the visualization, so you can see without needing to do the hover. So if we wanted to take the rating data and add it to text, Again, this is defaulting to the sum of the rating. So we want to change this to be calculated as the average. Now, what we're seeing up here in the line chart with the average rating is actually now being communicated right on top of each of these bar charts, so that if it makes it a little bit more easy to see the specifics, or if you were really focusing in on the exact average rating, the text can be a little bit helpful in this case. Now the detail layer, the last one, works pretty similarly to text, except that it doesn't show it the data on the visualization itself. So by dragging the rating detail, now we can see if we hover over, we'd see it in hover, but not displayed right above the graph. And actually that was a bad example because we already have the rating. No, actually it was an okay example because our rating data is on our line graph up here, but now by hovering over, we can see the rating data right on the detail view. And that's all of the layers. So before we move on to the next visualization, I think this would be a good time to kind of pause and see if anybody has any questions about what we're looking at here or any of the examples we've walked through in this demo. Johnny, have you seen any questions come in yet?
Yeah, we had a couple questions. I can kind of highlight them and talk through my answers. Would that be good, Jennifer?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. So the first question was, how do you navigate from a report to the Visual Explorer option? So if you have edit access to a report, you can select the Visual Explorer from the Add Chart button. Jennifer, if you can show, there's a couple ways to locate the Visual Explorer. So yeah, at the top there, as Jennifer is showing you, you can just click Visual Explorer there. You also have the ability underneath your query to add a new chart right there. And if you click that button, you can select Visual Explorer there. The next question was asking about dynamic set of values in a dimension. So for this particular question, I wrote a brief response, but basically to give a little bit more color to this one, you have the ability to generate custom color palettes. So let's say, you have 4 values in a visualization, but your palette has 5 colors. If a 5th value is added, that particular palette will be applied to that 5th color. Now, if you have a 6th value, it'll go back to the 1st color. So we recommend, understanding your data a little bit and generating your custom color palettes based on what you think the values or how many values you're going to have in your visualization. The next question was, how many dimensions do you need to have in order to generate a visual display? So as Jennifer kind of highlighted here in the Visual Explorer, you would need to drop a dimension or measure into both rows and columns in order to generate a visualization in the Visual Explorer. And finally, this last question here, and I love this question, was asked from an anonymous attendee. They said, basically, it looks like the same as Tableau, right? What are the main differences or nuances? So I wrote a brief response here too, but basically the Visual Explorer was built using a similar framework as Tableau, which we kind of highlighted at the beginning of this session. And this was called the grammar of graphics. So the Visual Explorer is similar to Tableau in that you can sort of customize your visualizations as you build them. You're not necessarily locked into one chart type. So quick charts are great for when you know what type of visualization you want to build. And I would say, the differences are, it's really just a matter of formatting and how you build these visualizations. So this layers section that Jennifer's highlighting here is slightly different than Tableau. So you have the ability to get a little bit more granular when it comes to how you're formatting your visualization using this new layers section. And I think we might have gotten one more from Amy. So I'll go ahead and type a response to that. But Jennifer, back to you.
Awesome. Okay, that was fun. I liked doing some of the questions kind of midway through. So if you have questions that come up, we will answer more of them after this next demo. So yeah, to kind of highlight how to get back to a new or create a new Visual Explorer instance, we'll click our new visualization option and choose Visual Explorer. And this time we're going to be building out that multi-dimensional scatter plot that we were looking at the beginning. So this visualization Our goal is to compare paper reams sold by total sales, by account manager, by region. So even when I just read out that title, it's obvious how many dimensions we're able to display, but in a really cohesive and clean way with Visual Explorer. So we're going to be using size and color in our scatter plot, using the layers feature to communicate a lot of data within our single visualization here. So we're going to start by bringing the price measure and bringing that into columns. So we'll drag price into columns. And then, and that's because we want our price or our total sales data to be kind of displayed horizontally across the screen. And then we're going to drag the quantity, which is the quantity of sales, and we're going to bring that into rows. So right now it's defaulting to showing this as a bar chart. And what we're going to do is change this so that our visualization shows up as a circle, which would be like the circle, or the scatter plot visualization. Now, right now, since we have two continuous measures, which is why they're showing up as green, so that the price and the quantity, it doesn't really look like we have much data here because we don't have any dimensions to compare this data by. And so we've essentially just created the axes for our visualization with where we're at right now. So before I add more data, I'm just going to make a couple of changes to the range of my data, just so that it looks in the final version, so it looks the same. So what we're going to do is go into our format options over here and choose the sum price. And I'm going to change my title here first to be total sales. And then I'm going to use a range of 0 to 60, 60,000, not 30,000, 60,000. And as I do that, you can see that down here, my my values have changed. And we're also going to change this number format to be currency. Since we're tracking sales here, we want to make sure it's showing up as a currency number format. So those are the initial changes I want to make. Now we'll go back to our data and we can start adding in some of our dimensions. So we will take our account manager dimension from the data, and we are going to add this into the detail layer. So when we did this, it's a little small down here towards the bottom, but essentially what's happening is now we have a plot on our visualization for each account manager. So if we hovered over, then for each account manager, like this is Kevin Malone we're looking at right now, we can see the quantity of sales as well as the total sales revenue associated with Kevin. But now, if we add the price measure to the size drop zone, so price into size, now we can see that this has changed a little bit again. So now the plots have gotten bigger depending on the total price related to that account manager. And then the last thing that we want to do is we want to take our shipping region variable and add that into color. So this is going to change it quite a bit. When we put shipping region in, now you can see that there's color, first of all, but also we have a lot more data points. We have a lot more plots on our visualization. And that's because now, instead of there just being a plot for each account manager, the shipping region data is actually what's determining where the marks are showing up on our visualization. And so there's a plot for each order, and then the color is related to which shipping region it's coming from. So I know when I was first building this out, I had some questions about this, and I thought this was really interesting how changing the way and changing which layers I used. It changed how many plots appeared and where they appeared. So before we kind of move on with more of our formatting options, Johnny, is there anything that you can kind of add here that might clarify that if there's anyone that's maybe feeling a bit confused by what we've just seen?
Yeah, for sure. So as we kind of talked about before, this is just one of the many things that you can build in the Visual Explorer. So what we've done here is we've added a particular measure to size. So this is great for folks who want to quickly get an understanding of a visualization based on, you know, what amounts, or if you have measures that are talking about, like, for example, revenue or price or things like that, the layer section is great for that. So this particular visualization, you know, just a basic scatter plot, something that you can build using the Visual Explorer. So just one little note there.
Yeah, awesome. And then, of course, if you hover over any of these, you can see the specific details that each of these plots is communicating. So to finish up this visualization, I want to show you how you can use some of the format options. This is particularly, you know, if you didn't attend our last webinar, or this is new to you, you do have a lot of options for how you want your visualization to display in kind of its final form. So we are going to choose from our format options our sum quantity variable here. And we're going to change the title to be paper reams sold. And this just adds some of that clarity for anybody that we'd be sharing this visualization with. Paper reams sold is a little bit more obvious than sum quantity. So we want to make sure we're adding clarity whenever we can. And then I'm also going to change the number format here to be short number, and that will just add in the comma so that, you know, it's easier to show. I think that's easier when we have the comma rather than just 9,000 without the comma. And then we'll go back to the sum price format that we were looking at before. And the reason why I want to come back here is because since we added the price to the size detail, now we have this legend displaying over here. And with our legend, you do have options with how you want to show it. So I think that moving the legend down to the bottom in this case is actually pretty helpful, because when we're already looking at the data in this horizontal manner, it's a little bit easier to kind of just drop your eyes below and see like the average width or diameter of the circle compared to the legend, rather than, you know, jumping over and looking at it when it was on the right hand side. So just a little bit of why I'm making these decisions. And then the other data that I want to format here is our shipping region. And I'm going to change the title here to just say region. And I'm also going to move this to be at the top, just because I like how that looks a little bit better. And then there we have it. We have our visualization, and this, you know, is pretty much looking the same as the one that we looked at in the demo. So you can kind of see the process behind the final example. And when you're ready to share this with your stakeholders or end users, you could add it to a report. And you can easily add any of your Visual Explorer visualizations to reports by clicking the little drop-down menu here and choosing Add to Report Builder. And when you do that, you'll get this blue check, which, you know, confirms that it has been added to your report. So with that, I mean, that concludes our demo portion of the webinar. We do have a couple other things that we want to talk through before we answer questions. And that is some guiding principles for when you're using layers in your own data visualizations. So when it comes to, actually, I'm going to go back here for a second. When it comes to best practices for using layers, there's kind of this reality that we have to confront, that every single data visualization is unique, every single data set is unique, and the stakeholders that you're speaking to are unique. And so it's pretty hard to, come up with a list of, this is when you should use layer type A, and this is when you should use, layer type B, because of the uniqueness of each situation. So with that in mind, we decided to offer some guiding principles instead for how to think about using layers so that they can elevate and improve your data visualizations and the messages you're trying to share with those. So the first thing we want, to remind you of is that layers are always great when you use them to reinforce your main idea. You want your data visualizations to be easy to understand, and as easy to understand as possible. And you want people to be able to interpret what you're communicating with them quickly. So layers can be really helpful with that by giving you several ways to reinforce the main idea or the main takeaway from your visualization. For example, as we applied this in both of our demos from today, in our faceted combo chart, we had the regions already displayed by quarter, but then we added the color layer, which when we did that, it became much more apparent that each of the set of the bars were related to each other. And then in our scatter plot, when we used the size layer, we made the comparative sales price a lot more obvious, because not only could you see where it landed on the graph, but you could also see the size transform to compare that data. The next guiding principle is to clearly communicate themes and patterns with your data visualizations. So it's always helpful to keep the end goal in mind. And, Johnny reiterated that a couple of times so far in today's webinar, which was, really helpful. If you're building out a visualization that's going to live in a dashboard with other reports, then you want to think about how all of the visualizations will work together to tell the larger story. You want to pay close attention to detail so that your use of colors is consistent across those visualizations, and so that at a glance, your data isn't misinterpreted. Another thing to consider on the topic of clear communication is that it is totally possible to try to communicate too much in a single visualization. So Visual Explorer's layers, they give you a lot of flexibility to display multidimensional data, but that doesn't mean that it's always the right, use case to use them all in a single visualization. So, use your discretion to communicate what needs to be communicated in the best way possible. And we got a bonus, we got two. So the next one we want to say is to use friendly color palettes. So accessibility should be top of mind when you're creating and assigning your colors and creating your visualizations as a whole, particularly with distinct colors or using categorical palettes. It's important that each color can be recognized and be distinct from the other colors in your palette, so that, for people that might be colorblind or not able to easily see the contrast with different colors, you want to make sure that, the color palettes you are using are colorblind friendly. And then finally, adding context to support the visualization. So you saw, as I was building out the visualizations, especially that final one, I made a lot of formatting changes to provide extra context and clarity to what we were looking at in that visualization. And you can also use the text and detail layer that we showed in today's demos to provide that additional context within your visualizations. And on top of that, once you get into the report builder, you can always use, text and detail and the way you arrange your visualizations on the report to just provide any extra information that your viewers and your stakeholders might need to be able to act upon the data you've provided them. So those are our guiding principles. And with that, we want to open it up to any other questions that you may have. So Johnny, have we seen any other questions come through?
Yes, we have. Should I go through a couple of them?
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. So the first, the kind of halfway point after we answer the other ones. We had a couple questions come in. And the first one, is it possible to dynamically format an axis containing continuous data, i.e. only show values which are between the 5th and 95th percentiles? So this one was quite similar to another one that I answered, but the best way to do this is to leverage calculated fields in mode. So I dropped a couple links in the Q&A to our help site, which allows you to understand how to create a calculated field, what different calculated fields are. But my recommendation here would be to leverage calculated fields to create those percentiles. The next question here.
Can I jump in?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
And next week's webinar is all about using calculated fields. So if you still do have questions or you want to see some examples in action, definitely join us next Tuesday.
Yeah, nice plug, Jennifer. Love it. So the next question here, anything you can build here, how do you link to a report? All new graphs you create will be added to the query report. How do I see them all together? So Jennifer demoed this just before, but she's showing you again. And the answer here is you can see all of your visualizations that have been added to your report via the report builder on the top left. And in order to add a chart to the report builder, we haven't added any from this report, which is why it says it looks like it doesn't exist here. But you would just click the drop down on the side of your visualization and then click add to report builder. So I think we have a couple here that have already been added. But yeah, so this is how you would add visualizations to your report builder. And this is where you would see them before you publish the report.
And you can also do a lot more editing to this as well. This is just put all of the visualizations here, but I could move these around. I could add text. I could do a bunch of different things within the report to get it ready to go.
Yeah. One other question that was a great question on pivot tables. An anonymous attendee said, when I tried to create a pivot table, I was not able to add multiple values. Is this possible? So when you click the add new chart on the bottom left, if you show that, Jennifer, you do have the option to click this pivot table, but this pivot table is quite limited in mode. We recommend leveraging the Visual Explorer to create pivot tables because it allows you more flexibility, and also it allows you to add more dimensions to your pivot table. So there's limitless amount of dimensions that you can add to your pivot tables in the Visual Explorer. I also linked to our field guides on how to create pivot tables, which includes how to create one value pivot tables and multiple value pivot tables. So I would recommend checking out that help doc. And then finally,
can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
And if you prefer to see kind of a walkthrough demo of how to do that, we did build out a pivot table in the Visual Explorer landscape webinar from 2 weeks ago. So I can also send a link to that, or actually, if Johnny, maybe you could send a link to that if you get a chance. That would be great.
I can see if I can find that webinar for sure. So I'll send that before we end this webinar. But the last question here that I just wanted to highlight, for a discrete variable that you use as an axis for this kind of visualization, is there a way to custom sort the categories? So great question, Andrew. Thanks for sending it. Categories will appear in either alphabetical order or numerical order, depending on the data type. So for this particular example, there are a number of ways you can kind of hack this. I think the best way is leveraging either calculated fields or doing this directly in the SQL layer, but kind of adding a alphabetical or numerical conditional before your actual thing here. So one of the ways that I do this with my mode reports is just adding a 1 before my first variable that I want to appear using calculated fields. So I added some more color to that in the Q&A section. And I think that's all we had, Samara. Or sorry, Jennifer. Samara's on too.
Yes, Samara's running it all.
I was looking at Samara for a second.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us and for all of your questions. And this was fun, and we hope to see you in next week's webinar when we talk about calculated fields in Visual Explorer. So thank you, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.